The most powerful divine system was up and running. She congratulated the host on another top-up. With virtual currency, the host's balance amounted to cosmic numbers. The host woke up in a terrible state. She started to get out of bed and put on her slippers. His name was Lin Yu, and it had been over 3 years since he had been resurrected. He had closed his balance. The moment he was resurrected, he had gotten his system. The protagonist was washing his face in the bathroom and thinking about how incredibly lucky he was. He had trillions of money in his account that he could only use after his death. The biggest problem was that the protagonist didn't want to die again. Suddenly, everything around him was covered in blood, and the protagonist looked at the mirror, which was also covered in blood. On the mirror was written that the hero will be one of the first in the horror game. The guy didn't understand what was going on at all. The protagonist realized that it wasn't his system, as it was appearing right in his head. The guy touched his finger to the mirror, and feel as if death itself announced a hunt for him. The smell was very familiar to the protagonist. Creepy bloody, it was the smell of death. The protagonist learned that at midnight, he would be moved into the game. Also, he was not the first. He started Googling for information on what it was. He couldn't seem to find anything, but at one point something seemed to be found. Many mysterious things were happening because of the players who had returned. A sinner had been set up to deal with the aftermath. Those who were chosen would enter the evil spirit world and be killed if they broke the rules of the quests. It was written that in each quest at least half of the people died, but the survivors could control the souls of the dead people. Whether the hero survived or died would depend only on him. The protagonist thought that getting a beta test was better than having monsters invade their world. The chances of the hero surviving were huge. He made the most interested face and made a decision to survive and become stronger no matter what. The clock was ticking, and very soon it should be midnight. The protagonist did his best to prepare himself for what was to come. The time struck midnight, and the guy was enveloped by a bright red light. The guy started to fail, and he was welcomed into the game. He was given the quest hotel of the afterlife, where he had to work and survive for 2 days. Total survivors. In this quest people 6 jokes. The guy finally arrived at the location. He immediately started looking around and saw the very same afterlife inn. He headed there and saw people just like him, who had been summoned to this world. Some of them didn't seem to be worried at all. Some of them were serious, but one girl was very worried and didn't seem to know anything. The other players were discussing the game, and the hero was watching. One man was upset that everyone around him appeared to be new to the game. One girl came up before him, since if it wasn't his first time here, he could help her. The man said that he had been through the game more than once. Everyone was thrilled with the news. The man yelled at the guys and told them how terrible the game was. He showed his scars. The girls immediately got excited and were scared. The hero came forward and started talking to the man, namely asking about his experience of the game. The man immediately noticed the interesting hero. He was sure that with such thinking the guy will definitely complete the quest. The man explained that the ghosts here will not kill for nothing. He explained that the ghosts kill only if the player broke the rules. He also said that the basic rules will be prompted to the players in a very direct form. The protagonist immediately thought about the fact that he knew this. Also, he assumed that maybe other players should be sacrificed. The door started to open. All the players immediately looked in that direction. An old man came out of there, who was laughing very creepily. He greeted the guys at work at the afterlife. The old man introduced himself as an accountant and said that he came out to distribute tasks to the players on the orders of the owner. The protagonist and everyone else noticed the old man's incredibly cold breath. The old man informed that before starting work, he would tell a few rules. The protagonist knew that these were the very rules that the players would die if they broke. The old man began to tell that the guys must do their job well, because otherwise the head will not spare the players. The hero thought about everything. He thought that the accountant is afraid of the mistress, but she will not attack him because he is her subordinate. The old man said that if the guys broke something, they would have to pay for it. The third rule was to always obey the customers. Even if the customer is wrong may be lucky, but if the customer wants to pick on the players will not save anyone. He asked if the guys had any other questions. All were silent, and he said it was time to give them the job. He pointed to a big man and said he would help the cook cut vegetables. He walked past the hero without showing any emotion. The man looked at the guy and mentally asked him to take care of himself. The old man was looking at the other players. He approached the girls and told them they were responsible for cleaning up and gave instructions on how and where to get the tools. The old man approached the guy in the suit and said that he would reconcile the accounts. Only the main character and the girl were left standing. The old man said that these two people were like dolls with beautiful flesh. He told the guys to go to the living room and take customers as waiters. The old man pointed the way and really hoped that the dolls knew how to behave and would not break the rules. The girl was terrified and trembling. The guy took her by the hand and began to drag her to the place. As he supposed that it could not be delayed, they crossed the threshold of the creepy building. While the girl was looking around, the hero was silently walking. She thanked the guy for helping and introduced herself as Lee. The protagonist said that he would call her Lee, but she should call him Lin. He suspected that you cannot call your full name from the words of the big man. The girl thanked Brother Lin again, and they opened the passage. There was a large enough space waiting for them. They looked around a bit, and the girl asked what they should do next. The protagonist said that they should wait for the meeting with the guests, thinking that from now on every action decides life or death. Suddenly the hero's coolness came to an end, as he saw a huge monster. It made terrible sounds and shocked the hero. The monster was salivating and was immensely happy that there were living people in this place. The protagonist did not know what to say. He was normal, so scared. The guy pulled himself together and, pointing to the table, asked the gentleman to pass. The monster's face changed. He started to move, saying that he didn't know it was the waiters and thought he could have a good meal. The protagonist in his thoughts appreciated the game. The monster shut the table, the sound of which frightened the hero and his companion. The guy was very glad that nothing broke, because it would have been their fault. The monster held out 2 coins and demanded a pot of hot water and some plates. The boy bowed and said okay. The hero looked at the coins and realized they were copper. He moved on, thinking that the cutlery was very strange, as if alive. The girl wanted to help, but the hero stopped her at the last moment. The protagonist said that the teapot was heavy, so it was better for him to take it, as he should not upset the guests with it. There were horrible screams of the object pleading to kill him and that he was hot. The kettle began to splash boiling water, and one of the drops hit the protagonist's hand, causing him to let go of the object and be horrified, as it was very bad. The kettle shattered to pieces, and the hero along with the girl stood looking at this. She suggested the hero hide the teapot. He thought about the girl wanting to throw everything away. The hero said that wouldn't work. An old man appeared behind their backs. He called the hero fussy since he broke the teapot on the first day. The old man said that the value of the kettle is 50 pieces, but he immediately attacked the hero because he knew that he had no money. The old man decided to take his hand as payment. The girl was horrified and started screaming, at which time the protagonist said screw it and noted he could pay. The protagonist withdrew 50,000 nimbus from the system in coins. The protagonist was covered in an aura that surprised even the old man beyond belief. The hero exuded a terrifying aura, and the old man seemed to realize something. He instantly stopped moving as he felt a pure yin energy. Yes, not only stronger than his own, even stronger than the mistress. The protagonist raised his hand, on which coins appeared. The protagonist threw a bundle of coins and said that this should be enough to compensate. The coins fell, and the old man was shocked that a man could do such a thing. What surprised him the most was the amount of money. For that money he could sell his life. Anyone would be willing to kill him for that amount of money. He thought that maybe even the landlady could be forced to kill him for that amount of money. The old man decided that the hero was definitely not a newcomer. The girl was thinking about how incredible the guy was for shaking this spirit. The protagonist was sure that even the monster will idolize him, seeing the money from the system. The hero was very happy because the old man was only scared by 50,000 pieces, and he had more than 1 trillion of such currency in his account. The hero decided that without breaking the rules, the old man couldn't kill or punish someone. The protagonist grabbed a strand of money and held it out to the old man, saying that he should take it while it was given. The old man had never seen such a huge amount of money and didn't know how to act. The protagonist said that let him take, and remembered about his tasks with the system, namely to spend 100,000 as a reward. He could get a cashback card and 10 cleared wines of health. Due to the fact that the cost of the hair was 100 men buy, and the system does not count what is 100 times more to spend, was counted only 10,000. The hero was sure that in this world rules decide everything, and he should have no problems with money. The protagonist took the plate and asked how much it cost. The old man replied that 101, and the protagonist pretended to accidentally let it go. It shattered and started making sounds. The girl watching was horrified, and the old man was also very surprised. The protagonist gave the old man money, saying that he would like to make friends with others in the hotel. The guy thought it was a great opportunity, seeing how the old man reacted to the money. The spirit said he couldn't be a friend, but if he needed help in the future he would be there for him. The hero said he understood and advised the old man to put the money away. The guy headed to the next dish. Suddenly the hero heard a voice that advised him to stop breaking the rules. The old man recognized this voice. It was the landlady. The hero noticed that the voice was not creepy at all. Parquet assumed that it was because of money, and was upset that it would not work like that anymore. He took the teapot and came to the place apologizing for keeping the monster waiting. The protagonist put the kettle down and was ready to pay if the monster was not satisfied. He made a pliant face and said it was all right. The protagonist and the girl and the old man were shocked by this behavior. The monster thought that the hero is strong because he is very rich and can create things out of thin air. A smirk appeared on the guy's face. The hero approached the monster and said that he would pay for his lunch in honor of his apology. The spirit was happy for the free lunch. The protagonist said to order whatever was on the menu. He would pay for everything. The monster asked for one of each item on the menu. The protagonist was happy to be able to spend the money. The old man said that this would have to be reported to the kitchen. The hero smiled very frighteningly, which scared the monster. He shouted that it was time for them to start work, and said that they needed 2 of each dish more expensive than 31. The old man smiled and said it was 831, and he could draw 0. The protagonist laughed and said let it be 1,000. The guy thought that the amount was only 60,000 currency at the moment, and that was not enough. The girl turned to the protagonist, who was thinking about his own. Suddenly the guy got an idea and turned to the girl because he had a request. As a result, the girl stood outside the institution, while inside there was a real feast, at which the monsters were discussing something fiercely. The headless monster says that thanks to the hero he can get the essence. One of the monsters suggested that the hero is a representative of the Ghost King, and spends so much money to glorify his name. The monster girls wondered if the hero was married, while the guy himself was sitting around with others having fun. The hero said that the girl did a great job and asked the accountant for more. The hero said he would leave the money on the counter. The protagonist was finally able to complete the task of spending the money. The inventory appeared in the system, and a little later, the soul-cleansing wine was displayed there. The hero decided to use this wine now, and become the ultimate ghost lord. The strongest aroma resounded throughout the establishment. It was the very wine that the hero had received. The monsters were incredibly surprised at the greatness of the hero, since he possesses such an amazing thing. The guy smiled and stepped forward. He shouted that he was about to drink to all the guys in the establishment. He started drinking the wine very quickly, and the protagonist immediately felt a clear and cold aura. The protagonist gained +10 to spiritual awareness, and +100 to spiritual power. Now the protagonist could see his characteristics, and became a ghost lord. The protagonist received a second task, namely to spend 30,000 currency at one time. The reward was a contract for a ghost lord of perfect level 5 pieces. The hero was sure that the contract would give him a lot of power, and was determined to complete the task. The monsters were having fun and drinking alcohol. He looked at the monster who thought the hero was a great lord with great power, and a scarred soul. The monster decided to repay the hero, and stood up saying that Lin now becomes his brother. The monster held out a yin tool, and said that it was his gift for Lin's brother. He explained that the mirror could show ghostly creatures, and yin energy gathering points in the neighborhood. The protagonist thought the mirror was very strange. The system notified that this thing was just attached to the protagonist. The monster said he couldn't recognize the true effects of the item, and hoped it would be more useful in the hero's hands. The protagonist said that the thing would be of real use to him. The monster was shocked that the guy so quickly learned the true essence of the item. The protagonist decided to shove it into his inventory. The monsters were really terrified that the hero has a spatial treasure. They thought that he came from some dangerous place, and altogether the monsters decided to fly to the hero, and all sorts of kneeling before him. The hero was approached by another monster, who said that he also has a treasure for the protagonist. The guy said no need to be so polite, and asked what the old man had. He provided a necklace of the skull of enmity, which protected against spiritual attacks, and it could be charged with energy, and released at one moment to counterattack. The monster handing it over said that although the hero might not need it, it could go as a piece of jewelry. Odral recognized the protagonist as the master, and although it was of a lower quality than the mirror, it was much more useful in terms of attack and defense. Many other monsters didn't know what to offer, so they gave some of their primal energy to the vault of the hero's overall. The necklace began to absorb the gifted power, and the hero immediately felt a surge of strength. The boy thanked the spirits for their kindness, and they were incredibly happy to please the hero. The girl watching this said that the monsters flattered more than her father's subordinates. Time passed. The place was already closed. The old man thanked the hero, because thanks to him, the turnover increased by 5 times compared to other days. The protagonist realized why the ghost had left the place so quickly, because it was no longer safe for them outside. The hostess announced that the shift was over, and everyone should gather for dinner. For the hero and his companion, it was time to meet the other ghosts of the inn. The guy hoped that they're just as hungry for money. Bloody spots started to appear, which really surprised the hero and his companion. It said that there are 4 people alive in the current survival. The guys were surprised at such a low survival rate. The hero settled and started to think over some things. The quest turned out to be too dangerous, and if it wasn't for his money, he would have lost his arm. The guy was glad that now he had an item for self-defense. The old man explained that a little later they would all have lunch together, as it was a tradition of their establishment. A voice was heard behind the old man's back, asking why he was being so respectful to the new runner. It was a huge woman dragging one of the players behind her. The girl was terrified, as another guy had been sent to the monster and never came back. The girl started yelling at the guys, as she assumed they were doing nothing. She looked at them with an angry and frightened look at the same time. The protagonist thought that if he didn't have spiritual vision, he wouldn't have been able to recognize the jealousy in this woman's heart. The guy was sure that with the girl's abilities, she shouldn't be able to harm him. The old man and the woman's monster argued, and the hero realized that everything was not so harmonious. The old man said that the woman knows nothing. He, unlike her, does not torture his subordinates. The girl pointed at the hero and ordered him to get off the table. The girl decided to punish the guy herself, since the old man does not do it, and attack the hero. The girl smiled happily, as the hero would now suffer the same. At that time, the woman's blow was easily blocked by the amulet. The hero's amulet began to emit a frightening aura, and the monster felt and feared it, so she stepped back for fear of a counterattack. The protagonist thought about how pathetic this spirit was, since its power wasn't even at the level of the transparent general. The girl was startled, and thought that the guy was relying on a middle grade in weapon. She sat down at the table with the rest of the guys. The woman stared at the hero with an evil gaze, but the protagonist realized that she had a grudge against him, and as soon as she had the chance, she would kill him. The protagonist realized that he needed to get rid of her, because if others find that he is not so strong, they can simply kill him. The protagonist had to figure out a way to get rid of the ghost as soon as possible. At that time, there was another ghost, and absolutely everyone felt its power. He went inside exuding a horrible aura. The other ghosts bowed down. The protagonist assumed it was the cook, and that he was much stronger than the woman. The huge ghost ordered the man to place a pot of food on the table. The player obediently complied with this order, and he seemed to have lost an arm. The protagonist noticed this immediately, and was a little embarrassed. The big ghost lifted the lid of the dish, and said that dinner was served. Inside this casserole floated bones and eyes. One of the girls took an eye with chopsticks, and disgust was evident on her face. The other girl took the glasses that were in the casserole, and everyone began to have thoughts. The big ghost assumed that the girl didn't like his cooking, but so said it was fine. The ghost said if that's the case, let her eat. The protagonist told the player to sit next to him. At that time a huge ghost opened in Quietoito Butica. The hero realized that if you doubt the cooking abilities of this spirit, he will definitely want to kill. The plate was screaming from the wine poured by this man. He took it and drank it in a volley. He continued to sip the wine without even breathing. When he finished, he exhaled heavily. The big ghost noticed something. He pointed at the protagonist and asked why he wasn't eating. He assumed the guy didn't like his cooking. He made a terribly serious face and asked if the hero liked his cooking. At that time the hero got up from his seat and held out a bowl. He said that the ghost's drink wasn't good and suggested that it wasn't good to drink. He spilled the wine inside the bowl. Seeing such a big ghost froze in place. While the female ghost tasted the imminent death of the protagonist, the girl thought that the hero had some kind of plan. At that time the huge ghost was angry and asked why provoke him. At that time he started to smell a very pleasant aroma. The protagonist took out a soul-cleansing wine, which made the huge ghost very interested. The protagonist started talking about how the ghost has great cooking skills, but tasting skills are even better, so he couldn't watch the ghost drink that wine. The hero offered him a taste of the wine he was offering. When it was poured into the mug, the one was giddy with happiness. The man thought that if this was a way to piss him off, he would kill the hero, but he decided to give it a try nonetheless. He sat down and got ready to start tasting. He began to drink the wine, pouring it straight into himself, and instantly felt the heavenly overlay of its flavor. He felt magical under the influence of this wine. He had a feeling that it was only because of the wine that he was getting stronger. He put the bowl on the table and said that the wine was excellent. The protagonist was happy that his plan had worked. The protagonist began to pour another bowl, calling the ghost Prats. The lid was again very happy to have such a drink inside her. The man, on the other hand, was looking at this wine with his eyes wide open. This time he shook it off a bit, and embarrassed said that the wine was just fine. The protagonist now knew that this wine was very effective. He tied another bottle and showed it to the man, who was surprised by it. The protagonist asked if he could fill his new friend's mug, and the man said he would be incredibly grateful. Seeing such a picture, the others were just shocked. The old man and the woman were incredibly surprised that the man called the hero a brother. The woman thought that the hero in any case must meet his doom in this place. The protagonist refilled the remains and said he was sorry. The man didn't understand why, because the guy's wine was excellent. The protagonist sighed that it is a pity that it is impossible to fully enjoy the wine because there are no appetizers. The man said that the hero should not be upset. He is after all a cook. Now he will quickly prepare appetizers, and there will be no trace of pity. The hero said that the man's cooking skills are top-notch, but the problem is the spoiled food. Looking at the ghost woman, he said that it's all because of the ghost Kai. The guy wrinkled his face and said that cooking together with ghosts is disgusting. The man began to think deeply about these words, and when he realized, he put his hand on the hero's shoulder and said that he wished he had met him sooner. The man looked carefully at the ghost girl, who was very frightened. She got up from her seat and said that she did not offend the man, and they cannot break the rules. The protagonist thought about what the girl said. At that time an old man intervened and said that the woman had recently attacked the man's brother. The old man began to say that she had attacked his employee and violated the rules of the hotel. She tried to attack the old man, but a knife flew in her direction at great speed, which punched the ghost woman right to the wall. The woman said that even he couldn't do such a blue thing. The man approached he and said that she had broken a rule and should be fully punished, praising the old man and saying how well he works. He took up a thrown knife. She began to shout to ask to stop, but the man did what was necessary and struck a blow, from which the woman ghost fell to her knees and later completely breathless fell to the ground. The protagonist didn't expect his new buddy to kill her in just a few seconds. The man said he went to get the ingredients and asked the protagonist to save the wine for him. The protagonist was glad that the cook turned out to be very strong. However, the hero had unpleasant thoughts from the old man checking him out. The guy's gaze made the old man nervous, and there was a silent pause between them, in which the old man felt most uncomfortable. The protagonist took out something from the inventory and decided to toast the old man's health. He thought about punishing him and setting an example for others. The old man realized that the hero would want to tell the cook that he drank all the wine and was terrified. The old man began to think how to avoid drinking the wine and had an idea, namely to offer the hero a treasure. He looked at the hero and assumed that even though he was rich, he didn't mind taking gifts from others. He began to historically search for the treasure, and after a short period of time, he retrieved an item from his early years. The protagonist was interested. He felt the old man's fear of him. The old man explained that it was a high-quality material for creating in weapons. It cost a little less than a high-quality in weapon. The system confirmed the old man's words that it was a high-quality in material. The protagonist decided to do a quest to spend money at the same time. The guy asked how much the old man wanted to sell the material for. The ghost started to say that he couldn't ask for money for a gift. The protagonist started to pressure the old man, saying that he was a simple man and wouldn't take it for free. The old man assumed that this was the hero's rule. Everyone in this world has their own rules that can't be broken, and asking about them directly is rude. The old man asked what price the guy wanted to offer, and the guy started pulling out a huge amount of coins. The old man was covered with a huge amount of coins. The old man began to cry with happiness. This money was a chance for him, because the amount was really cosmic. Now the old man would be able to cancel the sales contract with the owner now. The old man fell on his knees and started tearfully thanking the protagonist for his generosity. He started hysterically hitting the floor thanks to the guy, to which everyone was very surprised. The girl thought about how genderless the guy was, while the man was surprised that the newcomer was able to make the strong ghost bow down. He even assumed that the hero was one of the legendary family of exorcists. As the protagonist received his reward, the contract gave him the right to control the ghosts. The protagonist read the details and was very surprised. It was more like a slave contract. The old man tearfully thanked the guy crawling at his feet. The protagonist didn't want to waste such a useful thing on him. The protagonist kicked the old man with his foot, throwing him off. The cook returned to his seat and said that he had already finished cooking the ghost dish. There was a very appetizing dish on the table. The cook said it was the first time he had cooked something like this and asked his brother to try it. The protagonist appreciated the skills of the chef while looking at the dish, but when he tasted it, the spiritual power increased by 1 unit, which pleased the hero. The guy was happy that even in this way, he was able to increase his spiritual power. The protagonist began to praise the dish, saying that it was perfect. The man was very happy that his brother liked it. The protagonist offered them a drink. They drank delicious wine and ate delicious food while others stood and watched. The main character ate the food very appetizingly, as he was getting a lot of spiritual power for it. After a little while, all the plates that were on the table were already empty. After the protagonist ate, his spiritual power reached 197. At that time, the man got drunk and talked about how good the wine was. The protagonist was glad that the biggest threat was now his friend. The voice of the mistress was heard saying that the meal time was over. She ordered the old man to take the boys to their chambers, and the man, with his trademark face, said he would do as ordered. The man said he was sorry to see them in for the day. They said goodbye to each other, and the hero realized that the man did not treat the hostess the same way as the man. At that time, the old man ordered other people to clear the table. Unexpectedly for the hero, the mistress invited him to the 3rd floor for a meeting. He did not realize how the mistress had given him the message. The guy started to climb the stairs. At the same time, he thought about what was waiting for him. He knew that he had attracted the attention of the mistress with his money. The boy arrived before the entrance to the mistress' chambers. Suddenly the door opened, and from there he could see the girl sitting on the couch. She was beautifully dressed and watched the hero carefully. The guy thought about the fact that the person in front of him was the owner of the hotel. The protagonist exhaled and headed towards her, hoping for the rule that if he didn't break anything he couldn't be killed on the spot. The protagonist said hello and asked what she wanted from him. The girl apologized for the guy accidentally being sent to work as a waiter. The protagonist was surprised that the mistress apologized to him. The protagonist replied that it was no big deal and advised the girl to just enjoy life. The girl said that the protagonist's money was bad for her hotel, and he promised to pay for everything tenfold. The girl said that it's small things and told about the murdered ghost woman, who worked in this place for 100 years. The protagonist tried to pretend he had nothing to do with it and talked about being a newbie. The girl got angry and broke the shelf, saying she wouldn't get into an altercation with the protagonist. She also warned that people who provoke her employees to a fight will not go unpunished. The protagonist felt terribly cold and asked what the lady wanted to say. The girl told how much this employee had done, and in the end, the protagonist had to pay damages for her murder. The guy asked what amount was appropriate. The girl first said 3. But then, with a confident voice, she said the amount was 50 guanai. The protagonist was disappointed at such a low cost. He made a serious look and used the cashback card. A huge amount of coins sprinkled from the sky. The girl was simply delighted, and the protagonist asked how the hostess looked at the fact that the cook from now on worked with him. The girl was shocked by such a statement. She thought about how rich this guy is since he wants to buy her cook. The protagonist thought that the ghosts were just a tool in the hands of the girl, and the cook was not very happy about it. The protagonist thought that making a contract with a chef was the best option for him. The girl began to think about the hero's proposal and to consider the price. The girl said that the man had been with her for many years, and the border would be difficult without the cook. She started demanding that the protagonist had money. The protagonist raised his hand and cashed another million, which the girl was incredibly surprised. The hero asked if the girl was satisfied with this amount. She lit up with the money and said she was fine with it. She started pulling out some papers from her chest and threw it right at the hero. The guy caught the object, flying at him. The guy got his chef's contract. He noticed that he would never have left here despite the amount of money he had to pay. The hero mentally praised the girl for a great contract. The girl said that all the hero had to do was to destroy the contract, and then the cook would be free, but she didn't give a guarantee of what he would do next. The hero told the girl not to worry. He had plans to the cook. The protagonist turned to the girl and asked how much the girl would ask for a contract with her or for the whole hotel. She remained silent, seemingly thinking about something. She kept thinking about it and eventually said that she and the hotel were not for sale. The protagonist realized that money isn't everything in this place after all, and said that he wouldn't poke the girl anymore. He started to leave her quarters. She was upset that the guy wouldn't even insist. The girl had a feeling that she would see her hero soon. The guy opened the door to the inside of the bedroom. There were other players sitting there who immediately took notice of him. The girl was happy to see the guy, while the other was afraid of the hero because she saw him as a danger no less than the ghosts. The guy told the guys that he had made some deals with the owner of the hotel. The guys were shocked that the man managed to charm the landlady. The man knew that the hero was a newcomer. He directly asked if he belonged to the Yuletide family. The protagonist sat down before the guys and said that it was a series of ordinary accidents. The man had only heard of people like the protagonist on the forum before. The protagonist assumed that there was a forum for communication between players, and it was a correct assumption. The man said that was exactly what he was going to tell. He asked if the guys knew about the new investigation center. The girl said she had seen the news and asked if it was true that they had started investigating the game. The man explained that they could call them and get help from the center. The only thing the state needed in return was the whole truth about what the guys had seen and done. This could be called outside employee status. The man explained that he was one of those employees and told them that when the boys got stronger from the status would change. The girls seemed happy about such news. The protagonist returned the cards asking if they now had to participate regularly in the games. The man said that they do and that the draft is every 2 weeks, but you can get in earlier if you pay money. The protagonist asked if there is really access to other players on the forum, and the man confirmed this by saying that it is an anonymous chat room. The man explained that no one has to remember the players they see. It's a rule. That's why the forum is anonymous. The protagonist understood and remembered this information. The man asked if there were any other questions. Everyone went to their beds, and the man said good night. The protagonist, in the meantime, called up the system. The protagonist used a cashback card that returned him 5 times more than he spent, namely 10 million. The next task was to buy that item exceeding the price of 100,000 and get profit more than 5 times. The python cackled. The morning came. The protagonist woke up and thought of another day in the ghost world. The protagonist was mystified that he had become a ghost lord since he had stayed up all night, but didn't feel tired. The protagonist was thinking about what he had already accomplished. At that time, the others woke up, and they didn't have their faces on them from fatigue. The protagonist noticed that the others were not exactly optimistic. The protagonist opened the doors, where an old man was already waiting for him, who greeted Mr. Lin with a sweet voice. The protagonist asked the location of the cook, and he was logically in the kitchen. The hero went to the kitchen, and the old man wanted to say something about the work of the hero, but he thought about it and realized that the hero does not need to follow this rule at all. At that time the old man yelled at the others and said that it was time to get to work. The man stood there and did not hear the old man's shouts. He only admired the main character, who in his opinion was from an influential family. At that time, the guy had already arrived in the kitchen. The cook showed his masterpiece broth and told his friend to try it. He looks very scary, and the hero said he came for business. The man asked what the business was. The protagonist asked if his friend was working at the end of his own free will. Such a question seemed to hurt the man, and he was quiet for a while. He gave a sad look and admitted that he could not hide anything from his friend. He said that he had once been an important figure in the world of ghosts, but he had been attacked, was on the verge of death, and had no choice but to sign a contract. He said that at least he had time to heal. The mistress was not simple. The man was upset that for him, there is no more big world where he could taste a huge number of delicacies. The protagonist asked if he would give him a chance. Would the cook follow him across 2 worlds? The man said that the mistress would not let him go. At that time, the protagonist showed the man's contract, which he had bought from the landlady. The cook was very surprised and could not understand how his friend had managed. The protagonist explained that he just had the money. The protagonist said he couldn't promise freedom without danger. The cook was shocked that his contract had just been torn up, with the hero promising that if the man followed him, they would have a measure of wine. The man said that since they were friends, he was happy to be there for the guy. He said that the most important thing was not the wine and food, but the time spent with his brother. After these words, he signed the contract. The hero took the paper and received a system notification that the contract had been signed, and the system offered to see the characteristics of the cook. The friend had a spiritual consciousness of 2,500 and the spiritual power in him was 36,900. He had supreme weapons and strong skills. The protagonist was surprised at such strength. If they were not protected by the rules, neither of them would have survived. The protagonist was glad that he now had a strong comrade. The cook knelt in front of the hero and said he would follow his master. The hero said not to be so formal and offered to have a drink together. They had fun drinking wine together. At that time, the number of survivors was announced, which was dwindling, and now there were 3 left. The protagonist thought about the fact that after he made the contract, he easily passed the quest, yes, and the other 2 survived, but the other girl was torn when she encountered a guest. The protagonist thought about the fact that even now, he could not be called invulnerable. The guy was determined to become as strong as possible since the game opens every 2 weeks. He started to leave the hotel, and someone shouted his name in his back. He turned around to see who it was. It turned out to be a girl who ran out after him. She had a very nice look on her face. She thanked the guy for helping her on the first day, and after the hero accepted her thanks, she shoved a piece of paper into his hands. The protagonist began to examine it. The girl explained that she was from a powerful family, and if the hero needed help in the real world, he could call her. A notification popped up that the players were congratulated on completing the quest. The quest was completed, and the world began to fall apart. The hero instantly found himself back in his room. The guy was looking at the piece of paper with the phone number on it, and decided to check something out. He put it on the table, and looked at the clock. Although in the game 2 days had passed and reality was only a second, the protagonist turned to his spirit. He asked what the gentleman wanted, and the protagonist said nothing. The man was pouring wine. The protagonist was happy, as the contract is stable. Things work the same, and everything is fine even in reality. The protagonist thought about the fact that there are evil ghost hunters who end up nightmarishing ordinary people. The guy decided that the world is not a safe place at all now. The protagonist remembered that they would be pulled into the game every 2 weeks. The protagonist had a lot of secrets, so he wouldn't go to the department. At most, he would find the information he needed on the form. The protagonist started spoofing his IP address. He started logging into the forum. The protagonist looked at the ads that were not too interesting. But suddenly, the hero saw serious rules for the real world. Namely, do not use force against ordinary people, and do not tell about the game. The guy was now interested in the question of how he could protect himself. This game exists in a huge world of ghosts where countless spirits. They can kill people only by the rules. Ghosts are made into 7 classes depending on their strength, and humans have 9 ranks of strength. The protagonist was glad that his contract ignored the difference in levels, and he got a strong ghost. The protagonist with form found out that there are already over 100,000 players from all over the world. Some were lucky and found the wine, after which they could become lords. The protagonist thought about the fact that he had very little wine left. The protagonist saw that there was a trading ground for supplies on the forum. The protagonist saw an ad for offline trading. The protagonist was surprised to see that there would be a fair soon. The protagonist decided to register as well, and started to think of a name for himself. He decided to introduce himself as Emperor Fengju. When morning came, the system congratulated the protagonist with a reward of 6,452,000. The protagonist opened the system, and looking at what he has said, that this is real wealth, the protagonist went to the fair with his suitcase. On Monday, he received a personal message. On Thursday, he started packing, and in the evening, he was on his way to the place. The whole fair was to be held in an abandoned factory. A huge number of people started to pass there. The hero appreciated the safety of the place. The mask did not let him recognize people, and the badge was protected from forgery. One of the players praised the ghosts at the entrance, but the hero thought that his cook was much stronger. The hero was checked and told that if he wanted to sell an item, he had to go to the evaluation room first. At that time, some people were sitting behind a very modern appliance. The protagonist appraised the apparatus to appraise things. Another player assumed that the protagonist was here for the first time. He told that it was the only item that was capable of evaluating other items. He told that it was accurate enough so the hero would not be fooled. The protagonist realized that the power of the early players was much higher than he had assumed. Now he only had to hope that the fair would be of much use. At that time, the apparatus for evaluating the quality of an item was working at full capacity. He had evaluated one of the player's item for an evil weapon of the lowest first grade, which was lucky. The man explained to the protagonist that even inferior weapons could be worth more than 10,000, and that surprised the guy. The protagonist got worried about his mid-grade weapon and hid it just in case. The next person got an appraisal of such a gun material. The second person, on the other hand, got a terrible grade as all the energy had gone out of the necklace. The protagonist appreciated the expert's look, which was completely in line with the system. The protagonist let the man pass forward and hoped to see an evaluation of something worthwhile himself. The man put some paper on the evaluation table. When the machine started its work, he started praying that his weapon would be of medium rank. The machine began to make a strange sound, and no one understood. An appraiser looked at the thing and said, and didn't understand, as it wasn't a weapon or material. while another noticed that it had a strange purine energy. The third appraiser said that they could not appraise this item, and the man himself could put a price on it. After saying that, the man was very upset and started to leave. The protagonist asked the man not to be upset and said that he would definitely meet his buyer. When the protagonist looked at this thing in the system, a window popped up saying that it had detected the top quality energy of the pharaoh's ominous blindfold. The protagonist was surprised, but he was interrupted by the voice of an appraiser who asked what the guy wanted to appraise. He decided to ask for 1 coin from the system since he didn't want to stick his neck out to begin with. The protagonist placed the coin on the grading table. The machine began its evaluation. The man explained that if there were 100 coins, they would be in the lowest grade. The other evaluator stopped his partner. He said that the coin had such pure energy that it had no impurities at all. He started looking at the coin and realized that it was being used as currency among the ghosts. The coin changed hands, and the appraiser said that the montage was just in better quality. He started talking about how there is a hidden rule, and that is without these coins you can't make any trade in the spirit world. And with the help of these coins, you can trade in the spirit world. The appraiser assumed that the guy is not an ordinary person, as ghosts do not give such things to just anyone. Seeing the hero's name, Emperor Fengju, he thought between being a newcomer and being a hidden lone player. The appraiser asked where the hero got this coin from. He answered very briefly, namely that it was a trophy. The man said that it was very interesting. He offered the protagonist 1,500 yuan and friendship. The protagonist started to think that he could sell 1 million of these coins, and thought he was rich. The other man started to get angry with his partner. He explained that because of the amount of energy this coin could be worth 3,000 apiece. The protagonist said he had a few more coins with him, and asked if the appraisers could afford them. They said that they could buy any number of coins anyway. The protagonist only smiled after hearing such words. He opened his bag, from which a huge number of such coins sprinkled. All the appraisers were just shocked by the guy as well. One of the people said that he will contact the lady immediately. One of the appraisers said that the forum would not take it all at once, and personally offered to pay 4,000 for each coin. The people who were watching this immediately became interested. They ran in droves in that direction. Offering more money, people started begging to sell them these coins, and were ready to pay any amount. At that time, the man really hoped that the hero would not hold a grudge against him. At that time, the guy was very happy with his wealth system. The protagonist was thinking that there are things more important than money. He was thinking about who to sell to, and how much to sell to maximize the profit. Suddenly, someone shouted for everyone to shut up. A beautiful girl appeared, and everyone listened. The appraiser bowed to his mistress, while the hero stood bewildered. This girl turned out to be Madame Bei herself, the one who had organized the fair. The hero pondered about one of the founders of the forum and her possible power. The protagonist said hello to the girl, but she walked past him and went straight to the coins. The girl said that the coins were of excellent quality, and it was a bit wasteful to sell them here. The hero explained that he had some business to take care of, and that's why he was short of money. The girl said that she would buy 1 coin for 7.5 million. She also said that she wanted to be friends with the guy. All the people began to whisper, because the event that was happening before their eyes was truly legendary. The girl herself was one of the strongest players. You could say that friendship with her is like a life talisman. The protagonist said that he liked it, and the girl really turned out to be like a goddess and began to summon coins. The girl started to summon a spirit dove after it appeared. In his mouth was a suitcase, which the toad on the orders of the mistress threw directly at the hero. The guy thought it might be some kind of test, so he summoned the cook. The men were shocked as the cook's strength was on par with, or perhaps even higher than the toad summoned by the mistress. One of the men was surprised at how simple this event had just happened. The cook asked the protagonist to check the money that was in the suitcase. After a little while the suitcase was closed, and the guy went to the girl with the coins. He called it a good deal. The girl took the coins, and looking intently at the hero put them in the toad's mouth. Finally the girl said that she and the hero will see each other again. All the people were shocked by what had just happened. It was announced to the people that it was now that the offline fair was finally open. Bright lights started to appear around, and suddenly tables with chairs appeared in those places. One man approached the protagonist to ask to buy coins. The guy replied that everything was sold out, and he wouldn't waste any more of his time. The protagonist walked between the rows of people selling their stuff. He was determined to buy some good stuff. The protagonist would walk up to the people and the system would give him a full appraisal of the item, and he would decide to leave. The protagonist had already realized that most things without a certificate were trash, but he knew he could find something worthwhile. The system told him that it had detected a good mid-grade weapon. The hero immediately turned around. Since this weapon had a class like his necklace, he looked at the black wooden cube that the strange man was selling. The guy took the thing in his hands and asked his price. The man explained that he thought the thing was useless and said he would sell it for $2,000. The protagonist immediately agreed, and the man glowed with joy, even though he had just sold it for nothing. Now this weapon was tied up to the protagonist, and now his defense and attacks were not tied to just one item. The protagonist kept buying cool stuff for little cost. In the very corner, he saw a familiar man and decided to approach him. He immediately said hello to the hero. The guy looked at the man's goods and said that he had a lot of good stuff. The man said it was a bunch of junk and he would sell it for cheap. The protagonist took the very thing they couldn't appraise and asked the value. The man made a serious look and said that even though they couldn't estimate the price, it might not be small. The hero said that money should be spent and not saved. They made a happy look and said that in that case he would give the hero the thing. The man explained that he couldn't sell it, and since the hero knows how to use it, it could be his. The player said that in addition to this is that the hero is a strong man and he would like to be friends with him. After such words, the hero realized that he did not want to let the man suffer. He put on the table the same pile of coins that he sold to the girl. The man was very amazed as the coins were worth more than 7 million. At that time the protagonist was beyond happy as he now had a top quality tool. At that time the appraiser and the mistress were watching the transaction of the protagonist in the observation room. They couldn't understand why the guy was buying an unappraised item for such a big money. The girl felt that the guy was only rank 1 but was angry able to unleash such a strong spirit. The girl was sure that the guy could conceal his aura and was also good at appraising items. The fair was slowly coming to an end. The protagonist was immensely happy about his new purchases. At that time, an argument broke out, where a man was trying to buy an item for awakening spiritual power and consciousness. The players were yelling at the man because he wanted to become a player so easily. The man promised $10 million for such an item, as long as there were no side effects. The players said it was a reasonable price. And yes, the group had the money. The protagonist remembered a girl from the quest who was related to this family. He decided it was not a coincidence. The protagonist decided to use his wine. He put her on the table and explained that drinking this wine is enough, and it is fashionable to awaken spiritual consciousness. The man started to consider the wine as he thought it was too simple. The hero made a serious look and said that if the man didn't believe him, he shouldn't do business with him. He was scared and said that he trusted the hero. After these words, he immediately handed over a check for $10 million and said that the hero can cash it at any time. The guy thanked the man for such a purchase. At that time, the girl stood on the roof and thought about the fact that her father did not take her to the fair. The girl thought about the hero and the fact that he never called her. At that time, the father turned to his daughter and said that he had bought something that would help her. He took out the wine, and the girl immediately recognized it, as the hero had a similar one. The girl began to think that the hero had sold such a valuable treasure. He opened the bottle, and a huge amount of energy started to come out of it. She was now certain that it was Brother Lin's wine. The girl began to drink this drink, after which, her eyes began to shine with green light, and her body was covered with a green aura. She promised herself that she would be useful to the hero in the future. At that time, the protagonist found information about the girl. The protagonist thought that he should not take the game lightly. The protagonist thought that in theory there could be a hide-and-seek rule, and then the chance of survival becomes minimal. The hero knew that sooner or later, he would have to fight the ghosts. The hero summoned the system. He was just a chuchet to rank 2 now. Because of the spiritual power, the system was much better at telling objects. The hero summoned his better weapons. 1 medium for attack, 1 medium for defense, and a higher quality weapon for control and healing. After a little while, the hero was summoned into the game again. Now the lad was fully prepared to embark on a path of new adventures and game. The protagonist got into the quest otherworldly guest house, where his goal was to survive 3 days and fully pay the rent. There were already 3 live players. The guy got up from the bed surprised by the speed of movement. He saw that on the wall hung the rules and conditions of the game. The card that the hero had was the only one, and if you lose it, you can't get it back. No noise was allowed in this place. The area behind the building was very dangerous, and the manual advised against opening doors to everyone. It was also forbidden to trespass in other people's rooms. It was forbidden to litter, and the place had a curfew, and you couldn't go out after 11. The main character started thinking about these rules. There were 6 of them. He thought that he could just pay the full amount and stay in the room. However, the guy decided that this option was not for him, and attached the card to the exit. The hero was determined to use every opportunity to become stronger. Going out into the corridor, he noticed a huge number of rooms. Also, he was surprised that the number of survivors is only 3 people. The protagonist thought that the huge number of rooms are for the ghosts living here. The protagonist saw a poster that hung on the wall. There was a zoning scheme of the otherworldly pension. The guy was amazed by the scale of this map. If you compare it with the past, it's like heaven and earth. The first thing the hero decided to do for himself was to go to the real estate center on the 3rd floor. He called the elevator, which was quickly enough on the right floor. The guy went inside and saw a huge amount of blood marks and bloody hands. The guy realized that for a normal person to ride this elevator is a huge risk, but it did not stop him, and he went in as he was confident in his strength. The guy pressed the button for the 3rd floor, and the elevator began to move, making strange noises. Behind his back, the hero heard a creepy voice demanding to pay for the use of the elevator. It was a huge ghost, who covered the exit of the elevator with his body. He looked at the hero with his creepy eyes, smiling like a real devil of hell. The guy asked about the amount of money for the use of the elevator. The monster explained that 1 person and 1 use costs 1 yuan. Also said that if the guy does not pay, he can do anything to him. The protagonist's face changed. The payment was just pennies. The protagonist exchanged 101 dominiums with the system. The protagonist deftly threw the courier directly at the ghost and ordered him to take it to the 3rd floor. The monster grabbed the money with its teeth and was amazed that some human could find the money. At that time, the protagonist realized that the ghost would not stop there, and it was now that he was coming up with a devious plan. The monster started talking about how cash doesn't count, and he needs to pay by card. It seemed like he was trying to get the hero's body as much as possible. He was sure that the hero had failed to restock since he was a rookie. The guy only sighed with a disappointed face. He said he was giving this evil ghost a chance and raised his hand. The ghost started talking about how it was forbidden for them to use nimbai, and that he only wanted the guy's hand. The protagonist understood the monster's intentions and snapped his fingers, and then the ghost cook was summoned. Complaining about the elevator being cramped, the male ghost punched the monster. Approaching it, he asked if the monster really needed his master's hand. The monster began to cry and was terrified of the cook's strength. It wouldn't risk its life and spat something straight at the hero. The cook caught the flying thing, and it turned out to be a coin, which the ghost immediately provided to the hero. The monster started to say that he doesn't need anything, and the guys can use the elevator for free. The protagonist said that in this case the ghost really knows how to joke and snapped his fingers, after which the cook instantly pierced the eye of the enemy. From his eye began to come out some aura. The cook explained that the monster became one with the elevator, and if you kill it, the elevator will stop. The hero told the man to let the monster live. The guy threw a coin right into the ghost's mouth and ordered it to tell him about the otherworldly membership. The ghost explained that it was an alert of their complex and even the rules didn't apply to them. The monster also explained that each member of the elite has their own rules. The guy was interested. He asked how he could get otherworldly membership. The monster began to say that he is an inferior ghost and can only listen to the chatter in the elevator, so he does not know. The protagonist thought about it. He was sure that membership was a very important achievement. The elevator arrived at the right floor. The monster notified the protagonist that they had arrived, calling the guy a VIP guest. The hero asked his ghost to return, and he instantly followed his master's order. The guy headed in an unknown direction. The protagonist noticed that on this floor, there are 4 areas that are empty and spacious. In this place was the payment department. Also here is the information department, along with the real estate center and the complaints department. The hero was surprised by the last one, the complaints department. The hero was very interested in going to the information department, but first he decided to pay his bills. Just like that, the guy was determined to withdraw money and walk through the door. There he saw a huge number of empty chairs and workers behind computers. One of the ghosts immediately looked at the hero. The protagonist noticed that these ghosts are incredibly weak. The hero realized that the strongest ghosts were on the higher floors, and these were just labor. The protagonist held out his card and notified the employee that he would like to pay for his room. The ghost looked at the guy with an epiphany as he took his card. He swiped the card across the device. The staff member told him that the hero would have to pay 2,500 NMBI for the accommodation, as well as money for food and drinks would also have to be charged to the card. The guy immediately noticed that the prices in this place are much lower than in the hotel where he had been before. The ghost began to say that for today, it is necessary to pay 500 yuan, otherwise they will take the money in their own ways. The hero suggested that it could be paid with flesh, blood, and soul. The employee threw the card to the protagonist, saying that since the guy is new, he should hurry to the information center and find a job. This was useful information for the protagonist, because now he knew what services the center provides. The ghost started yelling at the guy, saying that if he doesn't find a job, he's dead. The protagonist wanted to say something, but the ghost interrupted him and began to say that they do not accept poor and lazy people. After this, the protagonist realized that if he doesn't show his power, they will waste his time. The protagonist showed a sign that VIP clients should be treated like gods. The employee started laughing at this. In his opinion, the player couldn't be a VIP since he was just a new resident. The protagonist said that the ghost is a brat and completely stupid if he cannot understand the obvious. After these words, the protagonist took out a huge amount of money and dumped it on the table. The ghost was shocked that the guy who looked like a poor man was actually so rich. The other staff ghosts saw the money and became very interested in the player. At that time, the protagonist asked to keep this money for him and clarified whether he was now a VIP customer for the employee or not. The ghost was incredibly scared, and taking the money he said that the hero is certainly a VIP client. When the device started counting the money, everyone was just discussing the pure in energy of this money. The employee informed the hero that it would now add 100,000 yuan to his balance. The ghost with the highest receipt gave the protagonist his card. The protagonist saw that the balance was displayed right on the card and realized why he was initially treated this way. The employee asked if the hero would complain to him. The protagonist explained that he didn't have time for such nonsense. The ghost began to thank the hero for such kindness and bowed low. The guy was thinking about what he should do next. He thought that there should be 2 more players in this place, and wondered what kind of people they were. The protagonist heard footsteps. They were footsteps on the stairs, and the protagonist was sure that for ordinary people, it was the best choice. Out of the door came a man whose hand had eyes. The protagonist was surprised that the man in front of him was a hunter of the 4th rank. The man was surprised at the 1st rank and asked if the floor was safe. The guy explained that the floor was safe, and the man finally breathed a sigh of relief. He started pulling out some kind of bag from his jacket. After he opened it, he pulled out a piece of meat. This meat was meant for a hand that opened its mouth in anticipation of eating. Once the meat was in its mouth, it began to chew appetizingly, and after a while it disappeared from the man's hand. The player asked the protagonist how he was able to get down so quickly and immediately assumed that he used the elevator. The protagonist told about the evil ghost who, even after receiving the money, he gets into a fight and at the same time asks about the dangers on the stairs. The man told a horror story that the stairs turned out to be a lawless place where ghosts tried to steal money and even set traps. The man approached the guy and, looking at the huge upward, suggested that you had to have money to live comfortably in this place. The protagonist talked about what he had heard at the center and the work that needed to be done for money. The man said he could afford to pay the full amount without it. The protagonist thought that it was hard to get a number at the fair and also thought that the player was a rank 4. The protagonist suggested that the man head to the payment and start exploring the place together later. The guy was glad that the man mistook him for a rank 1 rookie. They arrived at the place and the man yelled out that he wanted to pay his fee. The employee looked at him the same way he had looked at the hero in the past. But when he noticed the protagonist, he was very scared. The guy looked at the ghost with incredibly creepy eyes. After something like that, the employee became like savvy and asked how much the man planned to top up the card for. He knew the cost was only $2,500, but assumed there were other charges. After this, he shouted out the amount of $2,700 and held out the money. The clerk was shocked at the purity of those coins and said that everything was correctly counted. After replenishing the card, the ghost gave it to the player just as respectfully. The player offered the hero his help with the money as he was worried about it. The man started talking about the hero at the fair and how he was very strong and kind. Listening to this, the guy just showed a bark. The man started to help the guy and support him by talking about his high potential. He also offered to add him as a friend. The protagonist couldn't say his real nickname, so he just introduced himself as Fandu. The player appreciated the guy's name and offered to go on an adventure. The doors opened and the protagonist and the man found themselves inside the information center. There was a huge number of signs with tasks and with offers for sale. Behind the counter sat a sleeping old man ghost. The protagonist realized that it is natural that in this place to survive you need to either sell things or work for money. The man said that the work was likely to be incredibly dangerous, but the protagonist was happy that the man was they didn't have to do it. The player was surprised that the hero, although a 1st rank, was able to invest enough money. The man suggested going to the 1st floor where they could buy food. The guy offered to take the elevator down for convenience and called it. The man was scared. He was worried about whether the ghost would give him change from his large denomination coins. The elevator descended to the desired floor, and the doors began to open. Entering, the hero immediately reminded the ghost of his promise in the future never to take money from him. The ghost was incredibly badly frightened, and the player watched him carefully. The man was sure that the protagonist is not so simple, because even the offended ghost from the elevator, which is quite strong, afraid of him. The man began to speculate about the hero's strength. Looking at the guy, he even thought that he was simply hiding his power. The guys arrived on the first floor and immediately left the elevator. In that place, there was a huge number of spirits. On some things there was blood. The monsters immediately paid attention to a couple of people, and it made them laugh. They were watching the players, and the hero knew that these ghosts are the evil, but will not break the rules. On the first floor, there was a laundromat, a supermarket, and even a food court. All of these facilities took up only a third of the first floor. The protagonist asked if there was a door to the outside world on the first floor. The man assumed that it was simply forbidden to go out here, and suggested going to the supermarket. The guy told the player that they should do so, and together they went to the supermarket. As soon as they went inside, they were greeted by the cashier. The hero immediately noticed the terrible smell of yin. The item the man took cost 15 yuan. But he couldn't do otherwise, as he couldn't survive without food. The man took a strange water that disgusted the hero. He also took toilet paper, which made the hero hold back his laughter. The man asked if Lin Yu would buy anything, but the hero chose not to buy anything. The cashier was displeased and named an amount of 103 yuan. The man understood that it was difficult for a rank 1 player to get 2,500 money, so in his opinion the hero didn't spend any money. The man took the bag of groceries and said that he would go to clean up, but the hero said that he wanted to look around on the first floor. The player assumed that the guy would be earning money for food and didn't want it because of pride. The man told the hero to be sure to come to him for help in case of anything. Saying goodbye, he told the hero to be sure to come back. Now the guy could safely head to the elite store on the first floor. He started to enter the elevator again. The ghost of this floor respectfully addressed the hero, so the guy assumed that he learned about him from the ghost of another floor. The hero said he needed to go to the second floor, and the elevator collapsed. After he arrived at the location, the doors opened and the hero stepped out. The second floor was radically different from the first floor. You could immediately understand that it was made for the elite. Approaching the store, the hero incredibly appreciated the appearance of the place. 2 ghost girls stood at the entrance, one of whom informed the protagonist that the store was a membership-based store and did not serve ordinary citizens. The protagonist said, was interested in the price of membership, and the girl explained that it would be automatically received when the amount on the card reached a certain number. The guy held out his card and asked the girl to see if that amount of money was enough. The spirit immediately started talking about the small balance, but as soon as she took a closer look, she was horrified, because the guy's card had a whole 100,000 yuan on it. The girl immediately missed the hero, saying that he is already a member of the store. Looking at the goods in this store, the protagonist felt sorry for the man who bought something that would be better to throw away. The protagonist looked at the high-end ingredients and was sure that his chef spirit would make great dishes with them. After the purchase, the guy thought about the fact that it would be difficult for him to fulfill the next task from the system. There was no way he could afford to save money, and started running around the store, picking up a huge amount of items. The girls watched the protagonist choose only the most expensive goods, and were sure that the guy is from a rich family. The protagonist picked up the most expensive things, and at the checkout, he got tired that he had only 56,000 yuan in total and was upset that the supermarket has its limits. The store manager came up to the protagonist and said hello. The guy asked what was wrong, and the manager explained that he wanted to give the protagonist a gift for choosing their store. The manager presented the best dishes from the 30th floor, saying that only club members can buy them. The protagonist was surprised that the tool was mid-grade, and then he instantly called for a chef. He took this knife and called this thing very good, then immediately disappeared, scaring the manager with his aura. The manager offered to send the hero's things to his room. The guy agreed, and the ghost started shouting at the half anonymous that he would do faster work for the VIP guest. The protagonist did not miss the opportunity and asked how he could become a member of the Council of the Other World. The manager was shocked by the guy's desire. The protagonist explained that everyone would like to get bonuses. In fact, he wanted to increase his expenses in order to fulfill the system's task. The manager was incredibly scared. He had not heard how to become a member of the council, but knew how to become a member of the other world. The manager explained that the conditions were much more difficult than the one needed to become a member of their store, and the hero said to speak up. He explained that there were only 3 ways, and in each way you had to pay a membership fee of 150,000 yuan. The guy talked about how this was not a problem for him at all. The manager explained that the first and most popular way was to contribute to the society of the other world, or to deal with a criminal, or to work hard, and it was also possible to say something useful and constructive. The boy thought about the fact that that day would not be enough for him to fulfill this condition. The spirit explained that the second way was a referendum of the residents. For that, a referendum is announced between all the residents, and if more than half vote in favor of the entry, then everything works out. The third way was that 20 inhabitants of the other world invited the guy, or 3 members of the council of the other world, then he can become a member of the other world. The protagonist immediately realized that bribing would be much easier than holding a referendum. The protagonist thanked the spirit for his help and gave some money. The manager wished the protagonist the best of luck and said that a man with his goods would arrive soon. The protagonist sat on the spirit of the elevator and wondered if he would be able to solve this issue with money. At that time the elevator stopped, and when the doors opened 2 players could be seen. The protagonist felt that the new player had not reached the 5th stage to open the first rank, so the guy assumed that it would be very difficult for this person to survive. The man expressed surprise that the protagonist was also in his place. The hero explained that he had gone to the store for information and was going to the real estate center to check everything out. The man thought again that the protagonist would beg for a job, but didn't want to admit it because of his pride. The man talked about the guy he met and how he only went through the game twice and couldn't become a player. The main character thought about how the man would never believe that he had only been through 1 game and asked where the man was going to go with the fat guy. The man was going to go with a player to the information center to find a job for him. The protagonist realized that the man wants to help, but also wants the player to gain strength because if he hides behind others he will be washed away. The guy wished the players good luck and began to leave. The hero was determined to take maximum advantage of all opportunities to increase his level of strength. After a little while, the guy was already standing near the doors leading to the real estate center. He went inside and there was silence. The protagonist noticed that the sitting old woman was a stern ghost. She came up to the guy and introduced herself as a duty employee of the center and asked what she could help. The guy ignored the granny and walked past her. The hero told her that he would like to apply for membership to an otherworldly boarding house. The ghost was incredibly surprised by this application. She became very kind and asked for the membership fee to be checked. She asked if the hero had a letter of recommendation, but he said he didn't need that method. The protagonist mentally asked the system for 150,000 in NIMBYs and reached into his pocket for it. The guy took out his money and held it out to the old woman. She explained that first he had to fulfill other conditions before he could pay the membership fee. The protagonist didn't listen further and tossed the money up. The spirit didn't understand how these bills could have such energy, but on closer inspection, the old woman realized that they were 100,000 NIMBY bills, which shocked her. The main character said the amount was 150,000 NIMBY, and that it was 10 times the membership fee. The woman started catching the bills and apologized for her eyesight, but the protagonist explained that he wanted to make donations to the otherworldly boarding house as a contribution. The old woman was shocked that it was a donation as a contribution. The guy calmly sat on the couch and asked if he could become a member of the netherworld with such a contribution. The old woman stammered and said that she would ask the head of the council right away. She started talking on the phone and told about the 150,000 contribution, and that it was a pledge and it was 100,000 denomination bills. She made a shocked face after she got the answer from the chapter. She ran up to the protagonist and reported that he would be personally contacted by the council about the matter later. The protagonist knew that the higher the denomination, the rarer the bills are issued. He assumed that this was the reason why the head himself wanted to meet with him. The guy exhaled disappointedly, thinking that the process had been too easy. A little while later, the doors opened and a male spirit walked in, emitting a terrible aura. The old woman immediately bowed to the side of the head, while the hero sat nonchalantly on the couch. When asked if he was the man, the protagonist answered as confidently as possible. The old woman walked up to the head and handed him the money that gave the protagonist. Seeing such bills, even such a serious ghost came to a complete shock. He asked what the hero wanted to do since he was willing to spend such a lot of money. The guy was able to easily explain his motive, namely, that he plans to stay here and many features are not available. Since he is not a member of the club, the hero asked if his donation was enough for such a cause. The head said that the hero was the first to contribute as a donation. At the time, the guy rejoiced as one transaction was counted towards the mission. The guy said that because he was the first, the others really couldn't enjoy it. The ghosts were shocked since that kind of money is not that rare. It's the very least a miracle. The head started explaining about the member bonuses and started pulling out a card that proves it and is an ID. The head explained that now there would be no curfew for the protagonist, but also that he should not make noise and break in the rooms of others. The protagonist was settled on the 26th floor and he asked if he could visit floors up to 29. The head began to tell about what was on the upper floors. Most of all, he advertised 29 on which there was a casino, and in confidence, he told the guy about the special services. Hearing such bonuses, the main character was completely satisfied. The head asked if the guy had any more questions. The guy said he had one question. The hero did not hesitate to ask, since he was able to buy a membership, can he buy the seat of the head of the council? Such a question caused surprise and anger on the part of the ghosts. The head stood up and began to say that his seat was not for sale for any money. He started walking around the room saying that to become a member of the representatives you have to pass a test, and it is not for sale. The protagonist got interested. He pulled out more money and suggested that he might be able to contribute. During the trials, seeing the money, the head got visibly nervous. He said that if the guy needed it so badly, he would contact the other members tomorrow to discuss the matter. The hero was completely satisfied because he had reached such heights with just some money. The guy approached the head and held out his hand, and said that he would wait for good news. The ghost seemed to think about something, but still gave his hand to the hero. After the guy left, the ghosts were finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. The grandmother asked if the head could know who the man was. The head began to say that the hero sent led him to believe that he was a so-called player. The head explained that no man could have such a sum of money, and in such a denomination. But if the hero could, he was not an ordinary man. The head thought about the fact that the protagonist could both come with goodies and find out all of the information. He stood up and thought that this matter urgently needed to be discussed with the other council members. At that time the protagonist was on his way to his room. He was upset, because if he knew that he would have to change his place of residence, he would not have ordered things for this room. The guy was thinking about what to do, but several flashes flew near him. They turned out to be spirits that surrounded the main character's belongings. The guy assumed they were the same ghosts that were on the stairs, and he wondered what brought them here. One of the ghosts bragged that he had seen a member of the store carrying the items. The others began to discuss how a poor man could have so much money, and the ghost suggested that they steal the contents before the owner returned. They talked about how if they took the stairs the man would not dare to follow them. The protagonist was disappointed that the ghosts turned out to be just a bunch of greedy bastards. Walking, the guy shouted out to the enemies. Approaching, he asked what they were even doing here. One of the enemies said that it was none of the guy's business, and he should leave. The hero couldn't understand how it was none of his business when the ghosts targeted his stuff. The thieves were terrified that the owner had seen them. One of them seemed to start shaking and making strange noises, and later made a calm appearance and explained that anyone can say that. They started yelling about how it was their stuff, and the guy was trying to rob them. The ghosts started jumping around near the stuff and yelling about being the owners. They blinked at each other and instantly snapped out of their seats, grabbing their stuff. They ran towards the room. The guy started to slowly follow them. He started to go inside the stairwell, where the ghosts were already trying to open the contents of the box. They were amazed that the man followed them. One of them said that the man was too arrogant to come into their territory. The protagonist started to approach and said that it was a good thing they were here. Making a serious face, he said that he would be a lot less trouble without being followed. The guy pointed to the ghost's knife and asked what kind of fruit he was going to cut with it. He was angry for saying so and vowed to cut the hero into small pieces. At that time the guy, without thinking for a long time, snapped his fingers, and the ghost cook appeared, which instantly frightened the enemies with his aura. They stood in terror before the huge ghost summoned by the hero. At that time the cook raised his hand, in which he held a knife. It began to fall flame, and the cook said that this knife is just a treasure that can solve souls. The enemy who threatened the hero with the knife was incredibly scared. He dropped the ear and started running down the stairs begging for mercy. The cook did not think long about what to do, and threw his new knife in the direction of the enemy. After the knife hit its target, the ghost was stabbed through it. The others thought it was a chance to escape and started running downstairs. At that time the protagonist didn't want to give them a chance to escape and decided to try a new thing. He used the threads on his arm, and those went towards the enemies. They started to envelop the ghosts, and soon they found themselves bound lying on the ground. One was threatening the protagonist with his boss, while the other was begging for mercy and repenting. The guy looked at this and thought how pathetic they were. The guy asked how the chef his new knife. He explained that it is just a super item, and thanks to it he will now not only be able to help in the fight, but also to cook first-class food. The chef said that thanks to the ingredients he had just collected, he could cook the ghost dish. At the time the guy thought about what he had to do last time, but now there was no need for that. The chef promised that this time the taste and smell would be perfect, and the dish could increase the hero's spiritual power. Hearing such things, the hero said that he would be grateful to the ghost for such dishes. At that time the cook complained that he only had 3 ordinary ghosts, which was not enough for first-class dishes. The guy smirked and told his spirit that his words were a bit inaccurate. Just after that a huge monster started to descend the stairs, and asked, who dared to touch his juniors? Along with the evil spirit was a crowd of other weaker spirits. One of the captured ghosts was very excited about the appearance of the boss. At that time the cook froze in anticipation. It even made him friends. He instantly headed towards the enemies, and said with a smile on his face that he would be back soon. The boss's bat was broken. The cook began dragging the head of the enemies to the hero, and notified him that they would have a feast tonight. The protagonist held out his belongings, and said he'd bought them wine and other food. The spirit was happy to receive such a thing from its master. The protagonist thought that it was better for his ghost not to shine too much. At that time the cook broke the trap and part of the floor with his foot. The ghosts were simply terrified at the sight of this cook. As they climbed the stairs, the hero called their journey very peaceful. They went up to one of the elite floors, where the entrance was for members only. The guy held out his card to the machine for verification, after which they went inside and rejoiced at the beauty of the area. The cook said that there was a spatial artifact that expanded the building, and the hero was surprised by the local luxury. When they arrived to the hero's new room, he opened the doors. Inside everything was on the highest level, which surprised the guys. The guy saw something incredible. He instantly went up to the window to see the world of ghosts. Observing this world, the protagonist described it as a violent man, and that's exactly what this world was. At the time, the protagonist was pleased that some of the ghosts were limited by the rules of the thriller. The cook shouted to the hero that he was done cooking and called him to eat. There was a sumptuous dinner on the table, with many upscale dishes. The protagonist said that the ghost's talent was hidden in the inn, and here it could be revealed. The ghost began to talk about how the hostess was wary of him. Unlike the hero, the ghost poured alcohol and handed it to the protagonist, and said that he owed his skills to the guy. The protagonist said that there was no need for any politeness, and they should just sit down together and eat. At that time it was midnight. The hero saw the result of the day, namely that there were 3 people left alive. After the guy found this out, he opened his system. The protagonist remembered the information that subduing ghosts is incredibly difficult. The protagonist thought about the fact that some people risk their health when they drink some growth drugs. Some expose themselves to critical situations, and he only needs to spend money on expensive products. The protagonist reflected on the fact that thanks to the cook, the difficulty for him has been minimized. The protagonist remembered where he wanted to go, namely to the side apartments to look for materials. The guy headed for the exit to replenish his supplies. As he walked down the corridor, he was met by a man and another player. The man said hello to the protagonist, and the protagonist asked what happened since he was so happy. He started bragging about how he and the player had caught a bug yesterday. He talked about how he found a way around the curfew rule. The hero asked how the guys managed to do it. The man said that they got a night job, and with the help of a permit, they can move at night, as well as higher wages. The player explained that it was only because he worked at night that he was able to pay 500 yuan. The protagonist thought that this information was not completely useless, because now he knew that some stores worked at night. The man took out a hairbrush and told him that it was a marriage that cost only 300 yuan, and said that it was not only a test, but also a chance to become stronger. The protagonist asked if the man and the player were going to work at the store. He knew that if they were there his plan would have to be cancelled. The guy said that they wanted to get a good night's sleep, and that they would be given a much better job tomorrow morning. When asked if the hero would work, he thought about the fact that with a fortune of over 1 trillion yuan, he didn't need it at all. At that time, in the payment center, the protagonist arrived at the location and approached an employee. The hero asked if he could transfer his old balance to a new card, and the answer was that of course he could. The employee was incredibly intimidated by the fact that he was now working with a member of the elite himself. The ghost started talking, and as he started typing and modifying the information, he asked if the protagonist wanted to do something else, and the protagonist said yes, and holding his hand out he asked for 1 million in his system. After the money appeared in his hand, he held out 10,000 bills, and told him to replenish his balance. The employee started to talk, but as soon as he thought about the amount his face contorted with horror because it was 1 million. The ghost was frightened because he accidentally shouted it right in front of the hero, and was afraid that he would report him. At that time, The guy ordered to do it quickly, ignoring the fact that the ghost was nervous. After these words, the employee immediately went to work, while the hero thought about the fact that some ghosts are like ants in this world. After a while, the protagonist arrived at the store. The manager was already waiting for him, and the guy pulled the cart right to the cash register. When the hero arrived at the place, he gave his card. The manager was horrified and shocked that at such a young age the hero is already a member of the club. The ghost told the hero about his brother's restaurant on the higher floors, where the hero could have a great time. Hearing the words about there being a class above this store, it got the protagonist interested. The manager was incredibly happy and said he would ask his brother for a discount. At that time, the protagonist explained that he didn't need any discount and asked the manager not to look down on him. The manager was amazed at the kind of hero he was. He promised that the brother would squeeze the best items for the guy. Leaving the store and putting the groceries in his inventory, the hero thought about having a great time at the restaurant tonight. Going up to the 26th floor and getting off the elevator, the guy noticed a girl standing in the hallway. She anointed the hero and asked if he was the resident of room 2603. The hero was surprised that some person had come for him. The girl explained that she was the secretary of one of the council members, and her lord wanted to meet the guy and discuss cooperation. She asked what the protagonist thought about it. The protagonist didn't mind. He told about his plans to visit the restaurant, and that the council member could join him. After such words, the girl asked to wait a bit. She took a jade pendant in her hands. The protagonist, watching what was happening, assumed that this thing serves as a kind of phone. The girl transmitted the counselor's answer, namely that the meeting would take place at 10 o'clock in a separate room. The guy said it was no problem at all, and promised to treat the girl to a nice dinner. She thought about how rich the hero really is. The girl started to leave, but the hero asked her to stop. She did not understand what else to discuss. At that time, the protagonist pointed to the girl's pendant and asked how much it cost. She immediately got embarrassed because she thought that the protagonist was asking the price of her body. She said that it was for sale, and that the protagonist could do it on the 29th floor. The guy was shocked at this kind of thing. He explained that he meant the communication pendant. The girl said that this pendant is not for sale as it was given to her by the counselor, and also said that the hero can decide whether to discuss it with her in the evening. The girl started to leave and said goodbye. The protagonist was surprised that even a decent person like him could be misunderstood. The protagonist was thinking that he should definitely visit the gambling on the 29th floor. The protagonist decided that he should be as prepared as possible before meeting the counselor. At that time, the man called the player to himself. He was frightened by the fact that they will have to work at the top, where it is very dangerous. The man explained that everywhere is dangerous, and they should do their best to become stronger. The man started talking about the advantages of working up there, and the player was eager to do it. The man promised that he was always ready to cover the player, so he shouldn't worry. He pressed the button for the 32nd floor, and the elevator moved. At that time, the protagonist was in the casino, and had a lot of fun. The other gamblers were amazed at the protagonist's crazy bets. The protagonist learned from these spirits that the council is famous throughout the ghost world. The protagonist knew that there are only 13 members, and 3 of them were already here, so they definitely take him seriously. The protagonist decided that the council members were not as important as the task of spending the maximum amount of money that day. The hero told the others that it was time for him to go to dinner, and the guys said they hoped to play with him again. The protagonist went down to the 32nd floor, and that place was the elite of the ghost society. While the workers stood as straight as possible and waited for work, the player was incredibly worried as everyone in this establishment are strong ghosts. He could only hope to survive the day. One of the customer ghosts approached the player and asked him to come to the table. The old ghost asked the boy to pour him a glass of wine. He said he would do it now, and took the bottle of wine. The old man started to look at the player carefully. Making an incredibly creepy look, he asked if the boy was human. The player started shaking with fear, and tried to say that he wasn't. The ghost was surprised by the answer no, as he definitely felt that the player smelled as fresh as the cutlet on his plate. The player was horrified. It seemed to him that this was the end. A snake began to crawl out of the wine bottle, and pounced on the player to bite him. Out of fright, he threw the bottle away, and covered his face. The wine began to fall on the table. Prize Rack looked at it as an opportunity. Just in time, the man who had caught the bottle arrived. He apologized to the guest for the clumsy employee. At that point, the player realized that he had just fallen for an illusion. He knew that if he had soiled the guest's clothes, he would have unnamedly eaten him. Only thanks to the man did he survive. The ghost started shouting that the wine was worth a lot of money, and he wanted the guy's thigh as compensation. The man promised to pay the compensation, only to do so if he had to follow the owner's rules. The ghost knew that the owner was not an easy man to deal with, but called him out, Suddenly, the ghost's gaze changed and he saw the protagonist accompanied by a girl, and how the owner was treating him. At that time, the owner was very happy to see the guy in his place. The girl said that they should go to the Red Moon Hall right away. They were walking to the right place, but the protagonist paid attention to other players. The protagonist realized that the man and the newcomer got into an open-up situation. The hero asked the owner what happened at that table, and he said he would check it out. The guy said he would go with the manager. The old ghost started complaining about the employee and said that he spilled his wine. The hero asked the cost of the bottle, since paying for it is not a problem. The ghost said the man didn't even deserve to talk to him. The hero asked the owner if such an unqualified customer could dine there. The guy asked the owner the cost, and he told him that the bottle cost 690 minbai. The old man started to say that the guy could never afford such a thing. At that time, the hero asked to bring him 10 bottles. The owner said that the payment would have to wait as he would have to be clean first. At that time, the ghost thought deeply about who the protagonist was. At that time, the wine had already arrived, and the ghost began to say that it was not a bad compensation. The protagonist said that the ghost thought too much of himself, so he took the bottle and smashed the wine on the old ghost's head. Everyone was shocked at what the guy had just done. The newcomer was horrified that the player had just hit the ghost. At that time, the man called the hero handsome. The guy stood confidently behind him. Everyone was shocked. The ghost began to get angry. It seemed that now, he would be in a complete frenzy. The enemy began to rapidly approach the guy to attack, but the protagonist used his tape, and the fierce ghost was surrounded by the hero's tool. When the guy pulled the ribbon on himself, the ghost was completely bound. The protagonist summoned huge nails, and in one move sent them to attack the monster. After doing so, the monster was tied up on a table with 3 nails in its body. The protagonist took back his thread, and saying that the ghost deserved to die, took the second bottle. He brandished it with all his might, and smashed it over the old man's head, saying that it was his compensation. At that time, the owner handed the guy a towel saying that he could wipe his hands with it. The protagonist turned to the players. He asked if they wanted to try it too. The guys looked at each other and understood without words. They proceeded to beat the old man with bottles and seemed very happy about it. The old ghost started begging for mercy. He looked really bad. The protagonist went to the flesh and said that he would fulfill the request by giving the old man a quick death. After these words, the old man's head was pierced with needles. The players started talking about how incredible the hero was. It seemed that the man had already realized who the hero was. He wanted to deny it, but the players explained that they understood and would hide this information. The guy was happy that they didn't have to explain everything. The hero apologized to the owner for killing in his establishment. The owner said that this inferior ghost didn't even deserve the hero's attention, while thinking that the guy turned out to be not only immensely rich, but also with incredible power. The girl watching the hero assumed that he was hiding his power, as he was able to wield 2 yin artifacts. The girl was sure that the protagonist was actually an incredibly strong high-level ghost. The girl pointed the way and said that the protagonist had worked hard and should eat well. The protagonist looked at the most expensive dishes. He put down the menu and said it was too cheap. He asked the owner to find a more expensive dish. After all, he would have a councilman dining with him, and he needed to keep up his brand. The owner said it was a valuable lesson, and the menu is really terrible. They will think of a new one. The owner started talking about the combination of dishes and wanted to offer a discount, but the hero stopped that and started to cough. It quickly got to the Poishrak, and he said there would be no discount. In the end, the table was 18 courses and cost the hero 108,000 yuan. The guy seemed more satisfied already. The protagonist said he wanted the most expensive drinks. The owner seemed nervous. The owner decided to give his personal wedding wine for the cost of 100,000 yuan. The protagonist was incredibly happy to be able to spend so much money and held out his card. Finally, the main character's task was completed, and he got some great stuff. The next task was that he had to buy something more expensive than 1 million in front of 100 spectators. The protagonist was surprised that the tasks only became more interesting. At that time, a girl was approaching the hero. She smiled and nodded to him vocal. The girl was sure that the guy had a monstrous past, since he could afford a dinner for 200,000. At that time, the doors opened. Out came 1 low ghost and 2 attendants. It turned out that it was that counselor whom the girl immediately greeted. The protagonist also stood up as a sign of respect. The protagonist began to assess the strength of these ghosts. His attention was caught by the 5th advisor, who was about as strong as a cook. The protagonist greeted his guests. The guy introduced himself as Emperor Fengju. The reaction of the ghosts was not unequivocal. In their opinion, this name is absolute. The protagonist asked if the guests wanted to take off their cloaks. The girl from the council started first and took off her hood. The protagonist was very surprised when he saw the appearance of this girl, who looked very cute. The other counselor looks dangerous, and the third one was keeping up with him. The girl approached her lord, and in the opinion of the hero reported about what he had just done in the restaurant. Hearing such information, the girl was horrified, and became convinced that the hero is a very important person in the inner world of ghosts. Their council cooperates with the king of ghosts, and they were sure that the hero wants to work together. The girl made her assumptions and asked how closely he wanted to work with them. The boy in his mind praised the girl's intelligence as she immediately understood everything. The girl seemed delighted. She began to praise the hero's power, influence and financial status. The girl said that despite all this, they needed time for internal negotiations, and for now the guy could count on small cooperation. The hero said that's exactly what he was thinking. The guy decided to be sincere and asked what they wanted and what they could give. The girl told him that they control the hunting of people, also make money. The protagonist understood that the boarding house is designed to make money, but said that they do not interest him. But the information, the protagonist made a serious look and said that outsiders become more interesting. The counselors immediately assumed that the hero was here for that reason. The girl said that there is nothing wrong with sharing information, but because of the other country, they have restrictions. The protagonist crossed his fingers and promised to be with them in their time of need. The girl breathed out the air and calmed down. She said that after saying that they felt relieved. The protagonist was shocked that ghosts had such a thing as trust. The girl said something to the girl and anointed. Then the girl started moving towards the hero. She held out her hand and asked the hero to take the thing. There was a beautiful thing in her hand. The girl from the council explained that it was a badge of a council member, and from today any branch will be available to the protagonist as he officially becomes a council member. The guy was pleased. He put the badge on his sweatshirt. A little later ghosts entered the establishment, which brought a huge number of dishes, and the glasses began to pour alcohol. And the hero, after taking his, raised it and wished them good cooperation. All together they raised their glasses to that. The protagonist looked at the girl and said that he, as a member of the council, needed a way to contact the others. The girl was very embarrassed and could not answer anything. This was noticed by the ghost from the council, and immediately said that the hero has good taste. The hero tried to explain himself, but the girl said she would let the girl follow the hero. The boy only wanted to get the jade pendant, but it looks like it will have to be left for later. The ghost asked if the protagonist had a contract. He did, and he pulled out the contract. The girl bit her finger, and then began to sign the contract in blood. Once she was done, she officially became his personal ghost. The guy congratulated the girl for following him from now on. She dutifully presented the contract to the hero. It was late at night. They had finished their meal, and the girl from the council said that now the hero of all things could turn to them for help. The protagonist said that they could also ask him for help. As soon as the guy left, the girl immediately changed her face as she was sure that it was a surveillance of the inner forces. They did not understand why such an important person appeared in this guest house, which does not cost much. The girl assumed that they wanted to get into the world of people, and for this reason focused on their organization. The girl presented the protagonist with coffee, and he looked at her stats. The protagonist realized that even though the girl was inferior in strength to the cook, it was better to use her in public. The protagonist thought that soon the relationship of the girl before him would be better than before the council. At that time the ghost thought that she made the right choice. The protagonist decided to open his panel. The protagonist saw that he became level 2, spiritual consciousness 74, spiritual power 765. He almost went to level 3. The protagonist was happy that the feast had borne such fruit. The protagonist felt that he had become stronger, and now he could easily destroy a ghost equal to himself. The protagonist also received cool things from this system, namely soul-destroying talismans. The guy was very happy that the money had finally formed into his own fighting power. After a day, the quest was over and 3 players passed in the end. The protagonist began to return to his world along with the ghosts and his loot. The protagonist and a girl stood near a huge house. He gave her 10 million for the house, and the girl explained that she found the house completely according to the guy's preferences. The girl explained that the low price was due to the suicide of the previous owner. The girl said there were no ghosts, and the main character was incredibly happy about the purchase and thanked the girl for her help. The girl said it was part of her job, but thought it was the first time she had ever been praised. The girl began to tell information about the game she found and that soon the hero will no longer be a newcomer. When the guy becomes a full-fledged player, he will have a lot of bonuses. The girl explained that the next quest would be much harder. The guy said that they need to get ready, but before that they should definitely rest. The hero said that the spirits would be his sparring partners, but in the end the cook knocked out the hero with one blow. Later the hero and the girl attacked the cook together. They used their powers and artifacts. Finally, it was time for the next game. It was terrible weather outside, and a train was traveling on the tracks covered with bones. The goal of this quest was to arrive at the final destination of the train. Now there were 15 survivors in the quality. The protagonist wondered, as there were 15 people on this quest, he wondered how many would manage to survive. Passengers announced that everyone should follow the rules of the train. The hero was in anticipation. He was wondering how much this quest will be treacherous. The first rule was not to make noise, as it was not allowed to sit on other people's seats and make noise. It is forbidden to evade the purchase of a ticket, and there are premium seats that can be bought. The protagonist realized that at first glance there were not so many rules, but everything could not be so easy. The guy's attention was drawn to the mess across the street. There was a man complaining about the conditions on the train. The ghosts were complaining about the men, and the hero thought the workers' power was at a high enough level. The hero didn't understand why a player, who was already experienced, got into an altercation with this ghost. The woman explained that every passenger should have a ticket, and the man shouted that he had one and held out his hand with the ticket forward. The girl looked down and said that even though the man had a ticket, his ghost didn't. The man was horrified as it was the employee who noticed the ghost. She made a creepy face and informed the man that there were fines for breaking the rules on the train. The man apologized and asked how much money he would have to pay for another ticket. The girl apologized, as there were no extra tickets for the train. Immediately after these words, she released her aura, which scared the man incredibly much. She grabbed his leg and said that passengers without a ticket would be kicked off the train. A bloodthirsty smile could be seen on the girl's face. The man begged for mercy and begged to stop. But a moment later, his leg flew through the window of the train. The other players were incredibly startled hearing the man's screams. The protagonist called the rule not bad since it was a hidden trap. The protagonist was thinking about how not to cause trouble for himself, and finally the ghost girl arrived and before him. She asked for a ticket. The guy held out his ticket and asked about more expensive tickets. The ghost called people names and said that any seats were sold out for them. And about the private room, she explained that one stop costs 1,000 nimbies. The ghost was sure that the hero didn't have that kind of money. The boy was convinced, as always, that ghosts were very fond of money. The worker explained what to do to upgrade and then left. As soon as the doors closed, and the carriage instantly began mayhem. Monsters complained. At that time the girl player was scared. Apparently very angry spirits were interested in the girl. Although looking around, he pointed to the hero and the other players and offered them to play cards. They persuaded people to play with them, also saying that they would be in trouble if they refused. People started to approach the evil ghosts. At that time the protagonist was angry, thinking some 3 petty bipeds now provoked him. The hero approached the ghost and asked the cost of the party. The man told him that one batch was worth 10 nimbies, and if people didn't have the money they could take whatever they wanted as payment. The hero sat down across from him and said less words were needed and suggested they start. The ghosts were angry because of the hero's arrogance. One of the ghosts suggested that the hero was too confident in his poker skills. At that time the other players were shaking with fear. They looked at the protagonist and couldn't understand why he was so calm. The ghost shuffled the cards. He placed them on the table with his hand. Then cards flew out of the deck, and the hero easily caught his pair. He had useless cards. The guy looked around and realized that the man was luckier than the girl. Also, the hero's attention was drawn to the ghosts who were sure of their cards. One of them suggested that everyone should open their cards. Everyone opened their cards. The girl's cards were as bad as the hero's, but the man was lucky with 2 kings and an ace. The ghosts also said that a pair of kings and an ace was not a bad combination, but smiling, each of them began to show their cards, which were superior to those of the men. The man was scared because they had worse cards, but the guy realized that there could be no honesty if the game was being used to cheat. One of the ghosts asked for money. All the ghosts started to give money to their friend. At that time the man collected all his money and gave it to him. At that time another ghost yelled at a girl who only had 5 nimbies. He took what she had. The girl then grabbed her hand and started talking about her finger. As soon as she started yelling, the main character intervened and gagged her with an apple. The guy explained about not breaking the rule about yelling. The ghost explained that if there wasn't enough nimbies she could pay someone else. Altogether they looked at the protagonist and demanded their money. The hero smiled as the weak ghost shifted to show him their teeth. The protagonist used the power of the artifact, and a terrifying aura erupted from his body. Huge dragons and serpents now ready to attack the enemies, who couldn't understand where the strange power was coming from. After a little thought they realized that it was the main character. The girl thanked the protagonist for the apple. The protagonist took out a cupra and said that it was the smallest money he had. He held out the cupra to the ghost, but the other stopped his friend as he needed to play the right amount of games to take that money. The ghost thought about the good things the hero had and how he was getting cocky. The other enemy was planning to eat the hero and was already thinking about it. The ghost suggested that they all play big together now. The other ghost supported their friend and the hero, to the surprise of the players, said he saw no problem in raising the stakes. Steam but started pushing the other players, saying that they were too poor to play together with them. The hero told the players to leave, making a scornful face. The players were incredibly grateful for the help. The ghosts agreed to play with the protagonist. Round 2 was announced. The ghost started shuffling cards again, and the hero seemed to notice something. Cards flew out of the deck, and the guy got caught out. After all this, the hero realized how everything worked, and in fact there was no point in playing with ghosts further. The protagonist put the cards on the table, and said that the bet of 100 nimbies was small. The ghost started screaming as they thought the guy was trying to escape, while the protagonist got 1,000 nimbies and offered to play them. All the ghosts inside the train were shocked to hear such a figure. The spirits were saying that these guys are in charge and were surprised by the guy's courage. The protagonist extended the necessary money. The ghosts thought about it. In their opinion, the guy was a problem. They were nervous and unsure as even their method could fail them. The ghost asked them to finish this game at 100 and then they could think further. The protagonist hid the money and said he would play. The guy said he wouldn't leave. The guy said he wanted to have fun too. The ghost was happy that he had an opportunity to earn money. He started to pour his energy into the cards. They were not ordinary cards, but in cards. And as soon as the energy gets there, you can change the suit and face value of the card. The protagonist was serious, and the ghost calmed himself that even if the guy is lucky, he cannot win. The protagonist had long ago realized that the face of the cards could be changed. The ghost tossed his cards. The cards started to change, and fell back on the table, changing. The protagonist realized that the winner would be the one with the stronger aura. After the protagonist was offered to show the cards, he turned to the cook, and began to use his power to change the card. The protagonist could use the power of his spirits, a tenth of the cook's power. Thanks to this trick, the protagonist's spiritual power reached 4,500. The guy threw his cards forward. There was a sound and energy scattered around. The spirits didn't understand how the protagonist had such power. He was only rank 2. The cards fell on the table. The ghost was angry because the energy he had put into the cards was gone. When he looked at his cards, he was horrified as the change had not worked. The ghosts began to look at each other with a horrified expression on their faces. The guy assumed that the men had bad cards. He showed his cards and said they were very small. Absolutely everyone at this table had bad cards, and there was no way the guys could understand how a second-ranked guy could replace their cards. Ghost was sure that the guy was using some kind of trick to gain power for a while. He was sure that if they kept playing, the hero wouldn't last long. The ghost started giving money to the protagonist, and he thought about how poor they were. The protagonist asked if they would continue after playing for 100. The ghost offered to continue, and that the guy would bet everything he had. One of the ghosts said it was his own fault for his future death. The other ghost talked about how pathetic the man was. At that time, the man was already shuffling the cards. He was sure that if he changed the cards, the player would lose immediately. Suddenly, his face changed completely. He couldn't manage to infuse power as it was developing for some reason. He looked forward and saw the protagonist, who seemed like a god in front of a pitiful mortal. He couldn't understand how the player had managed to unleash that level of power. The ghost already began to think that this is not a trick, and there were thoughts that the hero is not human. The protagonist asked what was wrong and asked for the cards to be dealt. The other ghost started yelling at the guy. While the male ghost's hand was shaking, he yelled that they would not play. The ghost's subordinates didn't understand why the game was stopped. The guy asked why it was they weren't going to play, since he didn't have time to have fun at all now. The protagonist started pouring energy into the cards, and they flew out with such force that they pierced the bodies of the enemies. The cards were of high quality, and the hero was very surprised. The protagonist realized that the power of the cards could control the rules, which is why the ghosts were sure that no one would escape. Although originally the hero just wanted to get some ghosts, now he had other plans. The ghost started begging the hero for mercy. The protagonist explained that he was only doing what the ghosts were doing and gave the command to deal the cards. From the deck of cards flew out. The protagonist looked at his own, made a great face, and threw away his 3 aces. The spirits had to give the money to the protagonist. The guy apologized and reminded that they themselves let him win. The hero immediately wanted to move on to the next round. Ghost started crying and talking about how they didn't have any more money. The guy said he wasn't having fun for and remembered that anything can serve as payment. The ghosts tried to run away since if they continue their souls will be absorbed. The protagonist dealt the cards and they scattered all over the wagon. The protagonist got the souls of the enemies and their energy. The guy was sure that the cook was only too happy to deal with the spirits. The guy called for the cards, which were actually his biggest winnings. The artifact cheat cards were now tied to the hero. The guy now had one more trump card. The rest of the ghosts and the humans were frightened by the hero's power. A male player said that the guy had insane power. The girl couldn't understand since they were all new to the game. The man expressed his surprise that a monster like that had appeared among the regular players. The man even thought that the hero was not a player. At that time the guy was being watched by a man who couldn't see the limit of his strength. So he assumed that the hero came for the same reason as him. At one of the stations, a woman and a ghost came out. The girl thanked the hero for his help. The hero said no thanks needed and that he was as new as they were. The guy realized that the guys had already made up some scary stuff about him. The other players thought that only a hero can feel safe. The players started asking the hero for advice on how to survive. One of them asked the hero to take a look. He told them that he had familiarized himself with the route of their train. He explained that their ticket was missing a hole for stops. To complete the quest, the protagonist realized that this is one of the difficulties of the quest, because it is necessary to buy another ticket or find a way to skip without a ticket. The players were frightened by the offer to skip without a ticket. The guy explained that they have at least some experience and now, when the carriage is quiet they can watch. The hero said they should understand all the rules, and that's when they would have a chance to survive. The players were grateful to the expert. They praised him. The hero realized that even if you find a hole in the rules of the quest you still need to have power. He was determined to stay in the shadows and save up his strength, just in case. At that time the lighting in the wagon changed. The protagonist was so surprised. The whole wagon was filled with incredibly heavy energy, and everyone was surprised by it. One of the players was horrified at what was happening and was very afraid. He looked at the completely calm hero and praised him in his head. The guy on the other hand pondered the situation. Seeing the reaction of the ghost, this is not the norm. Upon reflection the hero realized that there was a powerful ghost near him while playing cards. He couldn't understand why a powerful ghost would get on such a wagon. One of the ghosts said they had arrived. The protagonist realized that this ghost had been waiting for this and assumed that something was about to start happening. The protagonist prepared himself as much as possible before the fight. At that time a girl who sang a beautiful song came through the door. He asked everyone inside if they wanted to buy anything from her. Other ghosts were fascinated by her aura and others were wary. The hero realized it was a mind control technique. The guy used the system and found out that it was a rank 1 sapphire tube artifact. This was the first time the hero had encountered a rank 1 artifact. There was no way the hero could refuse a high quality rank 1 artifact. The hero couldn't even imagine what they were selling. At that time the ghosts who worked on the train entered the carriage, and they bowed in friendship to greet the mistress of the Chamber of Commerce. One of the employees said that they could not be here. The girl started to say that she didn't care. She asked if the staff could take care of her. They promised to do their best. One of the staff announced that the girl had come here to take care of business. He explained that rare merchandise would now be displayed and after the sale she would leave the train. The ghosts discussed that they had only heard about the Chamber of Commerce and legends. One of the ghosts said that the chamber was created precisely to become rich. The hero could now understand why the staff was gathered at the wagon. The protagonist was happy to have this opportunity, but the problem is that the items are sold like in an auction. Even so, it was a great option for a guy who could spend endless amounts of money. The girl let out energy with her mouth. She conjured a sphere in front of her. There was a table for the auction. The hero was sure that the auction promised to be interesting. The subordinate began to take out items, each of which emitted an incredibly strong aura. The protagonist asked the system to evaluate the lots of the first round. The girl announced the first item, a lamp whose fire helps in gaining strength. The girl explained that the lamp not only raises spiritual power, but also knowledge of yin. Hearing such a thing, the ghosts got excited. They wanted this item. The protagonist realized that the description was exactly the same as the system. The evaluation of this chamber was much better than in the human world. One of the ghosts asked how much they could buy this item for. She said that the starting bid was 50,000 nimbai. A fierce race began with everyone offering a higher amount. One of the humans offered 60,000. Another ghost said it was pennies and offered 3,000 more. The protagonist realized that not all spirits on this train are poor, but compared to the protagonist they are all nothing. The guy got up from his seat and offered a bid of 150,000. All the ghosts were shocked by such a huge bid. The ghost was horrified as the hero raised the bet twice as much as it was his. Players were also terrified. as they do not have enough money to buy a ticket, and the hero at a time spends 150,000 on consumables. The girl started counting down to the end of the bet. There was silence in the carriage and no one dared to make a bet. In the end, the girl announced that the item had been sold to the hero. The lamp appeared and headed towards the guy. He took the newly bought item in his hands, and it automatically attached itself to him. At that time, the other ghost was thinking about what an idiot the guy was since he spent money on such a thing. The protagonist was upset that there weren't enough spectators to complete the task. All the protagonist had to do was hope that he would eventually attract the right number of people. The next item was the Immaculate Soul Pearl, which had a frosty effect. The protagonist raised his hand and said that he was buying it. The girl was embarrassed by such a bid and said that the item was sold. She announced the third item, namely the Soul Jade Core. The hero just as simply stood up and said he was buying it. The ghost couldn't understand how this person was able to spend over 200,000 in the first round. The ghost assumed that the hero was an important figure in the ghost world. Because of the hero's behavior, more ghosts arrived in the wagon, but it wasn't enough for him. The guy was determined to show what he could do in the second round. They brought the items that would be sold in the second round. The ghosts were horrified by the energy these items exuded. The girl announced the first item to be a liquid that was needed for tracking. The hero realized that it could be a very useful item, so was determined to sell it in the future. A starting price of 300,000 was announced, and the ghosts began to offer more in pursuit of the artifact. The protagonist again called the amount, twice the maximum bid. The girl was already scared out of her wits. She remembered the hero from the first bets, and now he continues to surprise her. The main character decided to make such a bet in the next round that others would realize that they cannot keep up with him. The guy again offered 700,000 for the thing, and the ghosts just kept silent. This herb could be used to create a pill that could instantly increase in consciousness, but the item that interested the guy the most was the blade. He decided that it would become his first male weapon. The girl told him that it was a soul-taking knife. She told him that this knife was forged like the one wielded by the Blood Queen, who was known for her power. This sword increased the strength of the wielder when he absorbed blood, and after the death of the enemy, the energy would flow into the wielder's body. All the ghosts wanted this item. The starting price was 500,000 nimbai. They started fighting for this item at once. The protagonist thought that his items couldn't be used all the time, so he decided that a blade that takes lives was the best choice. One of the ghosts made a bid of $750,000. The ghost prayed that the guy was not interested in this item and did not buy it. The hero realized that everyone was watching him and waiting for his move. The protagonist got up from his seat and shouted the sum of 900,000. The ghost was desperate and could not imagine how much money the hero had. The girl started counting down, and as soon as she counted to 3, she was asked to stop. She didn't understand why and looked questioningly. The ghost started to say that this is not right, and that something should be done with the bets from the hero. At that time, the guy realized that the moment had come when he could spend $1 million. The hero said he would pay $1 million for that sword. Everyone was in another shock from what they heard. The ghosts were incredibly angry and asked the hero to stop. The girl had been in this business for many years, and this was the first time she had seen something like this. It was also surprising that it was not in the center of the ghost world, but in some train. When the hero asked if he could raise the bet, she explained that he couldn't count it to 3. The protagonist was finally able to fulfill his build and got a great weapon. Now the guy was sure that now he would be able to do either part of the next task or complete it completely. The next task was to spend the whole 10 million nimbai. The protagonist was happy that by completing this task he would be able to enter the ghost world at will. The hero only had to wait for the final item, and then he would be able to complete this task. The next item appeared, and its sky covered everything around it. Even the ghosts became incredibly cold. The protagonist was interested in such an item. The item was a top-grade afterlife return pills. The girl explained that these pills could be used to restore any ghost's power to its peak. The protagonist thought that this was incredible, because these pills literally had life in them. The starting price of such a thing was $1 million. The ghost entered the game and immediately raised the bid by 100,000. The hero remembered that this strong ghost had not participated in the bidding so far. The ghost didn't waste money for the sake of this moment. He was serious about taking this pill for himself. Seeing the hero stand up, he was horrified. The guy immediately offered $2 million. The ghosts were shocked. Where did the hero get so much money? The man was worried that his money would not be enough, but he was not intent on doing his best. Looking to the side, it seemed he had found a solution. He asked another ghost if he was interested in the pills. He suggested that this ghost put their money together and split the goods equally. The other ghost began to worry and pondered the offer. After a moment, he said they had a deal. It turned out they had about $1.5 million each. The male ghost shouted out a bid of $2 million. The girl was surprised that there was any competition in this round. A man's voice was heard saying that the auction was surprising him more and more. The hero pondered why the ghost had entered the bidding now. Another ghost turned to him and smiled. The protagonist realized that the two ghosts had just decided to team up. The guy decided to play along. The guy decided to act like he was worried and called the amount 100,000 more. The ghosts were already confident of their success. They offered $2.5 million and started to provoke the hero. The ghosts rejoiced. In their opinion now, the protagonist would be defeated. The guy was completely ashamed, but he was incredibly happy that the ghosts fell for his trap. The protagonist pretended to be nervous and raised the bet of ridiculous amount. The ghost laughed at the guy and raised the bet some more. Everyone was sure that at this very moment the protagonist would be ready to surrender. The ghost started talking about how stupid people are. At that time, the girl felt sorry for the protagonist because he had spent a lot of money in the beginning. She started combing down. She was determined to account for this man. The ghosts laughed at the guy. They mocked him right on the spot. The protagonist, on the other hand, made a serious appearance. The ghost got nervous, seeing the protagonist's face. The guy said that everyone asked him to up the ante. The protagonist began to release a terrible aura. The ghost did not understand what will happen now, and the guy cashed $3 million and made a bet on them. The girls were surprised at the main character's acting skills. Ghost did not know what to do next. He had no intention to continue, as in his opinion the guy is a monster. At the end of this auction, this thing was sold to the hero. It went straight into his hands. The girls thought that the hero is very interesting. The protagonist was happy, because the pills could even return to the lives of the dead, and 30% of his task were completed. Some ghost touched the protagonist behind his back. He asked for the next item to be left to him. The protagonist thought about the ghost's suggestion. The girl talked about the material at the auction, and that it was of high quality. The protagonist realized that this item was worse than the last one, and the buyers were not interested because of him. He wondered if the old ghost dared to come right up to him and ask for it. The protagonist immediately made a bid of $2 million. The ghost was angry and glared at the protagonist. At that time the guy said that the one with the most money would win. The ghost said that he could not compete with the hero and asked to leave this material to him. He will pay more later. The protagonist was surprised that the ghost didn't hate him. The ghost explained that the hero couldn't understand the value of the item. The protagonist talked about the item, and the blacksmith was shocked that the guy was able to do it right away. The old man explained that if the material fell into the right hands, its value would be much higher. He explained that there are very few normal blacksmiths. The boy asked if the ghost was a blacksmith. He explained that he is a very famous blacksmith of this world. The hero explained that this thing will never be bought back from him, but if the ghost breaks the contract with him, then he will give the ingot for free. The ghost had no intention of ever recognizing anyone as his master in his life. He started talking about making the hero his apprentice. The protagonist said that they had nothing to talk about, and that he got a good thing for only $2 million. The girl started talking about the next item, which was a top-quality ghost face mask. This mask was able to change all external factors and mask a person well. The starting bid was $1 million, and everyone started fighting for this item. One of the ghosts was angry and offered 1,125,000. He started to say that if they let the man take it all away, it would be a real shame for them. One of the ghosts laughed and the man asked why. He started to say that in case the hero would take the last lot as well. He looked at the hero with an evil look and did not finish his words. At that time, the ghost fought fiercely for that item. At that time, the protagonist used the cashback card and named a sum of $3 million. Everyone was desperate because the protagonist had made a cosmic bet again. The girl said that the last item was sold, and that was the end of the auction. She thought about a guy taking all the auction items for himself. She felt that the protagonist didn't care about the amounts. He only felt joy in the process. At that time, the protagonist was able to get 10 times more, namely $3 million. The protagonist was incredibly happy with the work done. He was determined to ask an old acquaintance for help. The girl walked up to the guy and started praising his financial status. She asked how she could approach him. The protagonist assumed that the girl wanted to make a deal and called himself Emperor Fengju. The girl thought that perhaps it was through the protagonist that she could advance her career. The girl began to tell that she wants to make the hero VIP customers, which will allow the hero to know the list of goods and have a discount of 20%. The protagonist asked her to stop. He told her that he is ready to become a VIP, but he has a condition. The girl said that the guy would tell, and he explained that he did not want any discounts. Such a request shocked the girl. The girl said that the rules apply apply to everyone, and offered to change the discount to 20% cashback. The guy inquired in the system and called the cashback a gift, and it will not affect in any way. The guy decided to agree, which pleased the girl. She turned to her subordinate. He fired something from his backpack. The protagonist caught the thing flying at him. It was explained to the guy that this token could be used in all branches of the Chamber of Commerce.